All right, we are learning the Derech Hashem about the elements of prophecy. We're in the third section of Derech Hashem, which is a very exciting section. And it's a section where we first talked about a lot of mystical ideas about changing the physical world using spiritual means. We talked about demons, and we talked about using the names of God to make certain manipulations in the world. And after that we spoke about Ruach HaKodesh, which is divine inspiration, where a person gets ideas from Hashem, he gets ideas from God and knows certain lofty principles in a spiritual plane. And now we're learning about prophecy itself. Prophecy is when God speaks to people. Now we know that we haven't had prophecy in the Jewish nation since the times of the first temple. And but we're learning how it worked. How did it work? How did God specifically communicate with people? And what we learned last time, I wasn't here last week, apologize, but what we learned last time is that the way a prophet receives prophecy is through his connection to Hashem, by cleaving to Hashem. So he reaches a certain spiritual height. Not every Tom, Dick, and Harry can get messages from God. It has to be a very holy person, that he does certain preparations to cleave to Hashem. And when he cleaves to Hashem, then Hashem will give him prophecy. So this week we're going to continue discussing that, how exactly Hashem gives a prophet prophecy, how he delivers the messages, the mechanics of the prophecy. And we are in Derech Hashem, Chelek Gimel, Perek Gimel Os Hey, which is section 3, chapter 3, and letter 5. Okay. Derech HaSaga Hazaisi, Shetia Ayidei Emtsaim. The way that a prophet gets his messages from Hashem is through certain intermediaries. When a person gets a prophecy, he does not see God the way you see me, and well, everyone's screen's blacked now, but if I would see you, the way we speak to each other, that is not how a prophet receives his prophecy. But rather, through certain intermediaries, certain ministers, certain angels, they'll serve as the conduits for him to receive his prophecy, sort of the way a lens serves to the eye. So there's going to be a barrier, say a barrier is probably not, but a mirror, not really a mirror, but a glass, a lens, a divider between the prophet and Hashem. So it's through these intermediaries that he gets his prophecy. And through these intermediaries, he will get the kavod, the honor of Hashem. But it's clear that the spiritual connection he's having is to God and to no one else. However, the prophecy that he gets will change based on the intermediaries. It's like looking through lenses. When a person looks through lenses, the lenses can distort I shouldn't say distort, that has a negative connotation, but will affect the image. Shalom, are you able to mute your screen, please? Would you mind muting it? Okay. Can't hear, I guess. Okay. Elisha tishtana hasaga kfishina hemtsaim kriya vasvakaris v'yibachim bazem madregos harichuk v'akeruv u'behiris hasbakaris v'achirusa. And the level of prophecy that a prophet will get depends on the clarity or the cloudiness of these lenses. So it seems like a prophet on a higher level will get a more clear vision, or I shouldn't say more clear vision. We'll see. He's actually going to mention it. V'hinei. When Hashem reveals himself and bestows his shefa on the prophet, Yigbar alav tigbar is gadol. The prophet is overwhelmed. Umiyad chamro v'chol evare gufo yizdazu v'yichashu lehispech. All of his limbs begin to shake, to tremble, and it's like he's turning inside out. Because that's how physicality is. Physicality can't stand that much of an infusion of spirituality. All the more or so when Hashem himself is revealing himself to the prophet. That the human body, the physical nature, can't take that tremendous shefa, the very lofty revelation of Hashem that he's getting. Think of the Jews at Mount Sinai when they received the Torah. When Hashem spoke to them, it says that their souls left their body because there was such a clarity and such an intense feeling of spirituality, their physical bodies couldn't take it. So here the prophet doesn't die, but his limbs are shaking and his physical body has difficulty because of the tremendous level of holiness of having this connection with Hashem. V'hinei, hargoshaisav yibatlu, his feeling, his senses become incapacitated. V'gam pu'ulosav hanafshis lo yipalu klau, also his spiritual facets don't operate, ma'atzmam, they don't work on their own. So everything is like totally, the word in Hebrew is batal to Hashem. But rather they become dependent on Hashem's shefa. So when a person receives this prophecy, his body is totally shaking, can't handle it, and his spiritual side, his soul, ceases to act on its own and becomes totally dependent on Hashem. V'hinei, mitzadi is dapkus shenishmaso mistabekas yisvasifo mitzios haskala. Through his connection, this connection that he has to Hashem, it'll add to his intellectual understanding. Chutz migeder kol haskala anoshis legamri. But his intellectual understanding, based on his connection with God, is different than all other intellectual understandings. Usually, when we want to learn something, we read it and we use our minds, we use our physical minds. But the prophet, in this case, is not getting his information with his physical faculties, but rather directly from Hashem, and we're going to see the mind is only serving as a vehicle to get that information from Hashem. It is not the normal physical way of using the mind. Everything's coming through the very high source of being connected to Hashem. The level which he is getting from Hashem is higher than anything else that he would be able to get from his own nature. And in this way, a prophet reaches a higher level than someone who has Ruach HaKodesh. Because a prophet, he gets wisdom from a source of intellect that's higher than anything else. And it's the highest level of wisdom that a human being could achieve. And it's an intellect, it's knowledge coming directly from Hashem. So we really discussed 3 levels of intellect, we'll say. It's not really intellect, but the first level is just a regular, us human being using your mind to understand something. Then several weeks ago we talked about Ruach HaKodesh. What's the difference between Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah? So Rabbi Naaman says in the bottom that Ruach HaKodesh or divine inspiration is knowledge that's delivered to a person through Hashem, directly through Hashem, which is obviously a very, very high level. We do have Ruach HaKodesh nowadays. Certain people can get Ruach HaKodesh. But prophecy is an even higher level where it comes about through a person's actually bonding with Hashem. So that's an even higher level. So Ruach HaKodesh, Rabbi Naaman is saying on the bottom, it's just the Hashem delivering the shefa to the person, and the prophecy, which is a higher level, comes about from actually bonding with Hashem. And that is the highest level of knowledge that a human being can attain. V'hinei, Gilei Kvodi Yisbarach, Hu Yeh HaPoel B'cha Mashima Shel Chanavim Nevuaso. Hashem's revelation of His glory is the source of all the knowledge, everything that comes to the prophet. V'hinei, Mimenu Yimashich B'koach HaDimyon Shebenefesh HaNavi. Now through that, so Hashem, through the shefa that Hashem gives, that will make certain images in the person's, in the prophet's imagination. And he'll have certain ideas will appear in his imagination. Based on what happened from the revelation from Hashem. But these images in his head are not from himself. They're not from his own intellect. Hashem is putting these images Hashem is giving the shefa, and that's putting the images in his imagination. And through these images, Timashech b'machshava v'haskala. He gets certain thoughts and ideas. Shechakikasa tiyeh koyach hakavod hamizgala, that comes about through the revelation of Hashem's kavod, from His glory. Bishara inyan kavua b'sichlo, and that idea will remain in his brain. Shegam kasher yashav lematzavo hanoshi timatze hayidiyah bo b'beirua. So, and also when he comes back to his normal human state, he will retain all of that knowledge. So how does prophecy work? Prophecy works, the prophet cleaves to Hashem, gets in a very high level. Hashem bestows His shefa, His glory upon him, certain... Again, it's very hard to translate in English, and the proof is that Rabbi Naaman doesn't bother to translate the word shefa, so I'm going to rely on him. But based on the prophet's binding with Hashem, Hashem puts certain images in his imagination, and based on that, he has certain ideas which come to his mind that he retains when he comes out of his prophetic state. Because remember, in the prophetic state, his body is unable to handle the connection with Hashem, his physical body. He's on such a high level, and the soul doesn't do what it usually does. It's all controlled directly by Hashem. So he's in this prophetic state. He's not speaking to God like we're speaking to each other. It's on this prophetic state. When he comes back to his normal state, he retains all of this information. Zehaklal inyan nevuah l'chol hanavim. This is prophecy for all of the prophets. However, there are many, many levels. Like we're going to explain inside. In the highest level of the prophet of prophecy was Moshe. The Torah says, says there was no prophet like Moshe that spoke to God face to face. So I just said that prophets don't speak to God face to face. So Moshe is the one exception. Moshe Rabbeinu is the highest, the level of prophet who ever existed, as the Torah testified, and he is the only prophet that spoke to God face to face. And we're going to learn that there are differences between Moshe's prophecy and that of a regular prophet. And that's the Ramchal is going to discuss it, famously discussed by the Rambam. Actually, it's so important that Moshe's prophecy was different than all of the other prophets that the Rambam counts it as an article of faith, that one has to believe that Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy was unique. And obviously Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the one who gave us the Torah, because it's important to know that when the Torah was given to us, it wasn't given through a prophecy of these images and intellect by binding to Hashem, but rather the Torah was given to us based on Hashem speaking to Moshe like we're speaking now, and Hashem saying, write this word, that word, this word, this word, this word, writing all these words in the Torah. And they had a conversation like we're having a conversation now. There's other differences, but that's, I guess, the main difference. But what we were just discussing now was the main prophets. So Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yeshaya, Yirmiyahu, all of the other prophets in the Torah and the Tanakh. Okay, so just to summarize, the source of prophecy is when a person becomes so close to Hashem, and Hashem bestows His shefa on the prophet, and based on that, he has certain images and ideas that come into his head, which are not the product of his own intellect, and when he wakes up, he retains that knowledge. And Ruach HaKodesh is a lower level, where a person gets ideas from Hashem, but it's just Hashem directly putting a shefa into the person, not necessarily based on the hisdavkus of the closeness that the person has with Hashem. Obviously, you have to be close to Hashem to get Ruach HaKodesh, but the source of the ideas isn't necessarily the close, direct binding that is the same with the prophecy. All right, thank you to everyone for coming, and I wish you guys a great night.